door! Chase it!
Right, Balthazar Valentine, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
What's,
Reagan
what's new, man? What's been going on?
Been playing Detroit.
Yes, I hear you have. Now, this is just going to be us having a bit of conversation about it, because I find these are generally pretty informative, just impromptu conversations. So, what I want to know first up about David Cage's game, I won't make any assumptions about it. Tell me about the overall premise, because you've been playing this game for, a couple of weeks now. Give me the elevator pitch of Detroit Become Human.
I mean, the very short way of saying it for anyone who's seen the show is Westworld, a game set in the real world, not a fictional version of the real world kind of thing. The longer pitch then, for people who don't know that, is essentially it's just about androids coexisting with humans and their slow evolution or ascension into the realization of having full consciousness and the implications of that.
I don't know that was what Westworld was about.
Well, they got given consciousness via the whatever program, right? Whatever's name, the Wyatt initiative, right, where one of them was injected with full understanding and consciousness. Then there was the other one who went around behind the scenes and kind of broke out and remembered all her past lives or whatever and realized she was being controlled. So there's crossover things.
There's crossover, yeah, cool. So androids becoming sentient. So obviously set in Detroit. I know this is not on the script, but what's the kind of world like? Is it sort of dystopian, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it's not, in a weird way, it's not too different from our world. But it is also very different simply from the fact that there's androids. And so in a way, the only key difference is that technology has developed to the point that we can make lifelike androids that behave like people while still being programmed and controlled by people. But then of course there's also the other natural technological advancements that would have had to happen for androids to exist. So there are just things like obviously better communications networks, better data protection, stuff like that.
Cool. Better
public transport.
So it sounds like the world has gone to shit elements of it are just kind of based on that premise that sort of things have progressed and it's just generally a little bit shitter because of all those, because of things like that. Yeah, cool. Now, we mentioned it's a David Cage game, which, could go either way.
Yeah.
Could go either way. How does this compare to other David Cage games in the ilk of Beyond Two Souls, Heavy Rain, Fahrenheit?
It's really hard to try and compare something to perfection, and everything David Cage makes is perfection. So I'm basically comparing perfection to another form of perfection. So this is on the scale of perfection. Yeah. It's no, how it compares to the others, it's somehow a step up. I love all his games. I genuinely do. That's not like a, ironic statement or I don't love them because they're bad. I think they're great. I love them because I genuinely love his games.
See, this is the thing. Like when you first mentioned a couple of times, you were like, "Yeah, David Cage can do no wrong." I was like, "Is he serious about that?" So you are.
Yeah,
Yes,
I genuinely love his games. Yeah, there's a lot of flaws with them, but they're also just unlike any other gaming experience out there.
That's fair.
And I think for the better, because he could have made compromises and done other things to more mainstream them or make them what other people would say better with more gameplay or what have you, but he didn't. He made it his own thing, and that did make them unique. This compares to them in the vein that it's very similar. It's entirely narratively driven. The majority of what you're doing is walking and talking, with action scenes dotted throughout to really throw you when you're used to just walking and making dialogue selections while, and then all of a sudden it throws 10 quick time event button prompts on screen at once and you've got to hit them all within 2 seconds kind of thing.
Yep.
It really does shake it up a bit, but I would say this is his best work so far.
Awesome. Now, I've played once through the game, and I'm obviously trying to sound like I know nothing about it, but I just want to touch on it really quickly before we have a quick talk about like kind of the mechanics and things and that sort of thing. But just how goddamn good it looks.
Yeah.
It's so technically impressive.
It is. I would say, I mean, we both played it on a standard PlayStation 4, not a Pro. So I can't even imagine what it would look like on a Pro, but I would say this is... I personally think this looks better than God of War on PS4. I'd say this is the best looking game on PlayStation.
Well, it has that kind of that realism to it, right? It doesn't have any kind of artistic bent to it. Well, it does in a certain sense, but it's very realistic and it's the kind of game I would want to play on a high end PC, but I can't. So
you'd want to play it in 4K on an HDR TV.
Big time. Yeah. But I think there was only one time I noticed one little glitch, and it was kind of at the start of a scene when everything was still loading in, and it just loaded up, and it just took maybe like half a second to load in a character's face or something.
Yeah.
That was it. Yeah. Everything else, amazing. So we just had to sneak that in there. Mechanics. So you mentioned it's mostly just kind of walking about, and obviously it's kind of one of those, I would describe them as kind of like choose your adventure books in a game.
Yeah.
Is that still the case? How does that work? Is it different?
It is. It's very much a choose your own adventure thing, but also it's hard to say to what extent, because I've also only done one complete playthrough so far.
Right.
I think something David Cage has mastered, which I know from previous games, is something he mastered, the art of feigning choice without actually giving you many different results from that choice.
Yep.
So you always get presented with the choice, and there are two drastically different outcomes, but in the end, regardless of which outcome, it all comes together the same way, pretty much, kind of thing. Having only played Detroit fully through once, I don't know if that's the case, but I do get a strong feeling that it does differ from his past games in that respect. Just from scenes I've seen, the city, for one thing, can end up very differently based on your actions. You know, it can either remain very much intact or very much not by the end of the game based on what you do. And that's not going to be an instantaneous thing. You know, that's going to be a gradual change. The city will slowly decline and areas will get taken over or what have you, or thrown into disarray. So it does feel like this game really is much more your influence on the world, and you impact it. The core mechanics themselves are just really walking around, interacting,
making choices. And
making choices.
I felt a cool addition to this was the end of each kind of level, or so to speak, level in air quotes. There's that big kind of spidering graph of all the different choices you could make.
Really cool. I liked how it showed there were some levels, for example, I did them, and the level itself felt quite long, not in a bad way, not in a drawn out, but just like, that was, I thought that was going to be over fairly quickly, but that was actually quite a cool long sort of insight into this character's endeavors. And then the diagram comes up at the end, and I got the shortest possible ending, and it looked like there was a path that made it twice as long, kind of thing, and that kind of stuff. And there were things where I'm not sure what the variations are. So, for example, quite early on, I had one character die, and based on the chart, it doesn't tell you what the other options are that you haven't unlocked, but the fact that one of the questions was, did this character die? And I had yes and went one path, and then there was another grayed out path underneath and indicated to me the character can live. But almost the entire premise of one character's plot is derived from the fact that that another character died. And so I really want to try and get that character
it's not
live.
Just that scene by scene thing. It's kind of, there seems to be
like
some kind
an
of
entire
playoff
motive
between
throughout the entire game of one character was driven by the death of another character. So I wonder what would happen if that character didn't die.
Interesting.
And very much, I mean, it's all in my head at the moment. I haven't got it out, but this game, I have 3 playthroughs planned for it. I went full good the first time.
Yeah.
I got a full evil one planned.
Nice.
And then I've got a 50-50 one planned where I want to be good up until the point where I get pushed too
past
far.
That breaking point.
Because I want to see if you can get public opinion so high that even if you do a 180 at the end of the game and kill everyone, they still accept you. And then I've got the gamified playthrough where Hannah and I are going to each play different characters without seeing what the other's doing, and one will play the deviant and the other will play the detective, and I'll be the deviant trying to do stuff and get away with it without her seeing what I'm doing, but then likewise she's the detective trying to catch me without me seeing how she's progressing. So I'm also really looking forward to that one.
That's a cool idea. So let's have a quick chat about kind of the themes and ideas, because I think this is really where this game sort of, this is where it hit me hard anyway, was not necessarily the gameplay or the mechanics or how it was kind of fleshing out. It was really sort of the ideas behind it. So we've got these androids that are becoming sentient, and I guess for me anyway, and I'm keen to hear your thoughts, is for me it forced me to ask myself, would I consider these things human if this was real? And then, if that is the case, or, that is kind of the choice, but then, like, how do I react to that? Like, what is my instinctual kind of reaction?
Yeah.
And it's pretty amazing for a game I've not had that from a movie that covers similar themes and things like that, but, what was your sort of reaction to the themes in the game and the ideas?
This game, it's a thinker. It doesn't seem like it going in necessarily, but yeah, it's really, it's almost beyond acceptance and would you accept them, that it goes even further to get you to question what is sentience, what sets us apart as beings in comparison to everything else that is self-aware and aware of what it does, and why do we as a species feel the need to have a hierarchy and consider ourselves above other sentient creatures.
Yep.
And there's a lot of stuff that this game will do that will make you realize things about yourself when you're playing it. I, for example, as I said, I did a good playthrough, so I was very much an android sympathizer. The androids did no harm, they never raised a fist to anyone, and were fighting the key sort of platform of their campaign was we are alive. Yet, and as I said, I never hurt another human because I wanted them to see the androids as, being conscious of preserving all life. Yet, when an android was injured and, humans were coming to kill us, and it was like, do we leave him or whatever? I was like, I can't leave him. He's got valuable information. He's a risk. I got no choice but to shoot him in the head. And I didn't end up shooting him because when I was about to do it, my character lifted the gun to his head and said, sorry, I've got no choice. And he said, you always have a choice. And I then reconsidered it and I was like, this fictional android character that's been written is a better person than me. Like that moment was when it really hit me. And I was like, even though I'm doing this playthrough and I'm vouching for android lives, I personally still consider them below humans. And that was the bit that hit me, and I was, because it's like, this game really sucks you in. It almost makes you feel like it's real, like you are living an android, revolution and in this world. So when you have that realization about yourself, it's powerful, and you really do kind of think about how you view everything in the world. And that's when those deeper questions like what is sentience and self-awareness come into play.
Obviously these are deep questions, and I wouldn't say that they get answered in this game, but they do. They get
power
posed.
Of it. The game challenges you to think about that yourself. It never tries to tell you anything or preach at all. I think that's what makes this game better than David Cage's other games. It gives deep questions, but it doesn't even attempt to answer them. It just presents you with them and makes you reflect upon them.
Makes you go, oh shit, maybe not a good human. and it's really interesting, and I think that is kind of the core of what makes this game really good. So my last question on the piece of paper here, worth playing?
Absolutely, 100%. I would say, I know I'm relatively in the minority going out on a limb to say this is the game that anyone who has the ability to experience it should, not another PS4 exclusive that came out this year that everyone said everyone on the world should experience. This is the game everyone should experience. This is the game that people who suck at games will enjoy, because
agreed. Yep.
You can take it at your own pace and you can walk around. You can set it on narrative difficulty so that the quick time events basically don't have timers and you can't fuck them up, kind of thing, so that if you do just want that story, this is the game that people who turn their nose up at games, film critics who seem to forget that when films first came out, everyone thought films were a terrible media and weren't educating anyone and were rotting brains. They seem to have already forgotten that and can only see video games that way. They will think differently after playing this game. This is the game that the world should experience. And in my opinion, this is the best game on PlayStation 4 to date.
There you go. I would agree. I think, well, without really thinking too far into it, definitely 100% worth playing, and agreed with your sentiment. So there you go. Detroit Become Human, a good game.
Very good game.